Just before the morning
Your hometown radio station, 97.9 The Hill, WCHL, Chapel Hill. Streaming live on chapelboro.com.
Coming to you straight from the heart of Chapel Hill in the 97.9 The Hill WCHL studios from the independent voice of UNC Sports, covering everything from Ames to Zwicker. This is Inside Carolina Live. And now the hosts of Inside Carolina Live, Tommy Ashley and Joey Powell.
I'm not gonna let them catch me, no. Not gonna let them catch a midnight rider.
Welcome into Inside Carolina Live. I'm Tommy Ashley. That is not Joey Powell. We're sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt as always. Let's get right to the details here. That's Brighton McConnell of CHL fame. Brighton, how you doing this morning?
Good morning, everyone. I'm doing quite well. Happy to be joining in, tapping in for Joey, and excited to talk some Carolina sports.
Yeah, absolutely. And Daniel Myrick behind the board. Do we have that breaking news thing? Do you have it? Breaking news, everybody. Joey Powell is in the transfer portal. We will attempt to re-recruit him out of the portal, but no, in all seriousness, Joey, having a weekend off, having some fun. It's been a long season. Everybody deserves time off. A little planning here. What's today? March 18th. We've got a show next Saturday. It's also open football practice for North Carolina. So if you're so inclined, go to Keenan Stadium at 10 a.m. But tune in here. I may be walking around the studio or walking around the stadium, calling into the studio. But our last show of the year will be April 1st. A little bit earlier than normal this year, obvious reasons. But yeah, so Carolina basketball ended a little early. So the show will end a little bit early on April 1st. So we're down to 3. Brighton, this is different for me. I'm usually calling into your show. So I'm going to start the questions. How much NCAA basketball have you watched the last couple of days, given that North Carolina's not involved?
I was kind of wondering going in how much I was going to myself. I certainly didn't have plans. I was not like, well, because they're not in, it'll be great to be a casual fan, anything like that. I was wondering too. It's kind of just the second time in my lifetime that they've really missed the tournament, the 2019-2020 year aside. And so I was curious. The end result is I watched a decent bit of the first round games and a good bit yesterday too, when all the madness was happening. Was able to watch Virginia get upset. Missed a little bit of the Arizona Princeton game, which was a shame. But I've been able to watch a good bit, and it still feels like something is missing. Yeah. Being raised a Carolina fan, I'm very much born, bred, and dead in that regard. But it does feel like here in Chapel Hill, it's a little strange for the tournament to not matter, kind of like within the community. Something's missing, but there's also almost a sense of relief to be just a general follower without having a very vested emotional interest into this particular group, especially in a year where everything has been so crazy right off the bat.
Yeah, that's a great point there. And it's what I've told people, it is a little less stressful. And stress is a weird word, but we can watch the tournament without having to work. Right. So I don't have to worry about a post-game podcast or all. So it is you can watch games just for what normal people do and get to watch them. And you're right. There's been some crazy games. I mean, I had Arizona to win the tournament in my bracket. Right. So it's like the first big game of the tournament, I'm just going to burn it and tear it up. My record of having one decent bracket remains intact, and that was in 1993. I know y'all weren't born, but the year Carolina won it, nailed that bracket in 93, but since then it's been brutal. But as far as watching games, and I want both your takes, so Daniel, get in here. I've watched these teams play. When I watched FDU beat Purdue, Fairleigh Dickinson, and I've got some Purdue fans that we're great friends with, and they are devastated. They should be used to it by now. But these teams are athletic. These teams play hard. These teams are together. I mean, even NC State in their loss, I thought it was pretty awesome to see Jarkel Joyner jump on to Quavion Smith in the huddle and get him back. We never saw that for North Carolina. And I don't mean to start poo-pooing Carolina, but the stark difference in what we saw from Carolina this year versus what we saw and what we've seen so far from some of these tournament teams, it's just amazing to watch.
Oh, it is. And I'm going to poo-poo them just a little bit. I think my takeaway from the first round action is Carolina's exclusion makes sense. You watch how these teams have been playing, and it's not just the major powers, it's the mid-major teams too. They look so much more cohesive than the Tar Heels did in almost any single game this year. And it's the ball movement, it's the athleticism too, makes a big difference. We saw that with Fairleigh Dickinson last night, but that's also a pretty strange scenario where the 16 seed, arguably the 68th team in the tournament, was almost as athletic, if not more, than a number one seed. But still, it's one of those where it's like Carolina rarely played up to its talent level. And I think the fan base largely was looking at this team asking, well, what's going on? Because we know what they could do last year. And because they just underwhelmed so much, it never came together on the court. Watching how these other teams have performed, you understand why Carolina just was not in the same class. And it wasn't that the talent wasn't there, but it was simply just the execution and the cohesiveness of the team is nowhere near what these other teams have looked like in the tournament.
Yeah. I mean, and Daniel, your take here, I mean, I watched Fairleigh Dickinson, and I was like, them dudes can play. And the tallest one was 6'7", right? And they had Zach Edey on the other side. It was 7'5", and Edey had one shot in the last 13 minutes. And now part of that's on Purdue for not getting him shots.
Yeah.
But the other part on it is those boys were just busting their tails to keep him from doing anything. Who are you watching? Who are you paying attention? A lot of people in the chat are saying go Tennessee, and that's really against my moral beliefs. But I understand that right now. But yeah, I mean, what you watching?
I mean, my favorite team. Well, for one thing, you can go back to the Fairleigh Dickinson and all these upsets really, and you compare them to Carolina. I think they kind of just assumed we'd be here. You know, I don't know how much they thought they had to really try, like you were saying, have that cohesiveness. But you look at Fairleigh Dickinson, they went in, they knew, hey, maybe this is the only time we'll make the tournament for the next 20 years. So they went out there, they played their hearts out, and it just kind of worked out for them. Another team, one of my favorites, they weren't able to pull it out, but Kennesaw State yesterday, I don't know if you heard their story, but 1-28 a few years ago with their head coach, and now he's made it to he took their team to the tournament for the first time, and almost ended up beating Xavier. They couldn't quite pull it out at the end, but you could just see the heart those guys had. It was great to see these teams.
Another thing too, it's not just the heart, but Kennesaw State, Fairleigh Dickinson, Furman as well. They're coming in with a game plan. And part of it is that they've got time to game plan. They know for a week who it is that they're going to play. You're no longer in the conference slog. But you heard the FDU coach, Tobin Anderson, say after their first 4 games, we're scouting Purdue. And the more that we watch, the more that we think we can beat them. It's not just the players coming in and having that chemistry, playing with a lot of heart, but it's also because they have a game plan. They know how to execute it. And boy, it just makes a really big difference. And I'm not saying that's not what Carolina did this past year. It seems though last year, that was a good part of their success in the NCAA tournament was Hubert Davis knowing exactly what buttons to push and running with that really, really tight lineup. But it's not just, the little guy coming out here and getting lucky. It's also they go out and the players know exactly how to execute what the coaches and the coaching staff is asking from them.
Yeah, and I think another part, and you mentioned it, Daniel, is I think the bigger name teams, quote unquote bigger name teams, assume they're going to do something, and they assume whether Carolina assumed they were going to make the tournament this year, or if we just get to the tournament, everything will be fine. But you see a team like Purdue and all these other teams, and Xavier almost did it. They got it righted there at the last minute, but they play, all right? And anybody can beat anybody in 40 minutes. And we've seen that so many times in the tournament, which is why it's always fascinating for me to see it happen every year.
Right.
Where teams are so much better and then they're not. And I think one thing the tournament shows you is the parity out there is real. The transfer portal has changed the game for a ton of players and a ton of teams. You mentioned Kennesaw State having one win a couple of years ago. Well, FDU was 4-22 last year.
Right.
Wow.
Last year.
Right.
And I've mentioned NC State in the past. NC State lost 22 games last year. And these teams were able to turn it around. And I think that to turn it back to North Carolina here that's why, despite the attrition, despite the transfer portal, Dontrez Styles, the latest to become public, North Carolina fans especially think that Hubert Davis and the staff and everybody can just go ahead and pick up some guys and keep right on rolling. I don't think it's that easy as we've seen, because out of all the transfers that Carolina's gotten, 5 or 6 or 7 of them, only one's been worth it really, or one really made a difference. But I think that's what gives hope, not only to other teams, but to North Carolina fans as well. There's going to be a ton of news over the next couple of weeks, I think, as teams lose in the tournament, players enter the portal. North Carolina is going to be shopping. This is like, Black Friday, where everything's on sale.
Right.
There's going to be so many different players out there. So I just don't – I wonder, is it going to be as easy for a team like North Carolina, given what they've gone through the last couple of years, just to pick up a couple guys and just – get back to the top? What do you think?
Well, I certainly don't know if it is going to be easy, but it's definitely going to be easier than it was before, because there is so much talent that is going to be out there, and because it's just more accessible. But we've heard Hubert Davis, he mentioned this during his coaching show, that it is like speed dating. I think one of the reasons why it is tricky is because there is this such tight window before players are then talking to other schools, or they try and make their decisions to go ahead and get that offseason program going so quickly. That, again, to me, reinforces why I think it made sense for the men's program to go ahead and say, we're not going to participate in the NIT because we need to figure out our own game plan to attack the transfer portal and get specific guys that we know can fill the roles that we need to fill. I mean, now we know Nickel and Styles are gone. That's definitely going to take a hit to your depth, but it also then opens up the opportunity to say, well, what were those guys maybe not bringing to the team, or what did we hope that they would eventually bring to the team that we can go out and try and get a proven commodity for right now? I know personally, though, it is still disappointing because I'm raised in the era of Carolina basketball where you see recruits come in and you want to follow their development, right? I think that's going to be a really interesting kind of push and pull for a program like Carolina, Tommy, over these next few seasons. Is, do they want to go kind of maybe the NC State route or other routes where you're retooling every year with new transfers coming in, or you still try and ride that line of getting those talented 5-star prospects and you just use the transfer portal to fill in your needs from there? Because, Farley Dickinson, their top 3 scorers last night all came with Tobin Atkinson from his previous school. Yep. And there are so many teams in this tournament where it's like, oh, they made this leap this year because they just plugged in a couple of guys. Sometimes it doesn't take all that much, but Carolina is not a mid-major program. Carolina is a program where there are still some of those top-level recruits who are going to want to come. You have to be able to figure out the balance of playing them while also maybe playing seasoned vets, which we know that Hubert likes to do.
Yeah, and here's the catch for North Carolina, and this is something that's going to be an issue, and I've said it all week, and you got to play the bench because guys can go somewhere else and play. Dontrez Styles wanted to stay at Carolina. It's a dream school and all that stuff. But he said, I had to make a business decision, right? I had to go where I can play. I've got this God-given ability, and this is my ticket. I need to get it out there, and it wasn't going to happen at Carolina. So I think that is going to be something to watch here is, do they get high-level starters out of the portal? Sure, they have to. But you also have guys that you have to have a bench. And if you don't have a bench, especially in the tournament, it rears its head. Somebody gets hurt, somebody gets in foul trouble. So I think right now, and I've said this before, Hubert Davis has got 2 dots, which make a line. He doesn't play the bench much. Do I come to North Carolina as a portal player or as a recruit, knowing that if I don't start, what's my lot on this team? You know, if I'm not going to come and sit and play 6 minutes a game when I can go somewhere else. So that's going to be the thing to watch when we're looking at this North Carolina team, and who they get is they need some starters. They need to have guys that can play immediately, but they also going to have some depth. All right, we've got a great show today. Joey, I mentioned, is in the transfer portal, but before he left, we did some good interviews, and by the magic of radio, these are quote-unquote live interviews. Coming up after the break, we've got Matt Krause, UNC women's basketball play-by-play guy with the intel on Carolina's trip to Columbus. Melvin Scott, national champion, and certainly familiar with going from the bottom to the top. And then, of course, everybody's favorite after the break, after the top of the hour, Dewey Burke and I sat down and had a discussion. So enjoy the interviews. We'll be back Inside Carolina Live. It's Johnny T-shirt. It's Daniel. It's Brighton. It's Tommy. It's March 18th, everybody. Middle of the NCAA tournament, and we were here for you.
I'm Shimon Williams, and you're listening to Inside Carolina Live.
Chapel Hill and Durham are changing. It seems like every week there are more high-rise luxury condo buildings under construction. Now is the time to find the perfect investment property. As you build your real estate portfolio, we take care of finding tenants, coordinating maintenance, and depositing your rental income. The local real estate market is changing, and at Louise Beck Properties, we can help you navigate the future. Visit louisebeckproperties.com for more information.
Hello, Tar Heel fans. I'm Robbie Oakes, Managing Director of CIMG Residential Mortgage. As a Chapel Hill native and a UNC grad, I am proud to lead Chapel Hill and Durham's #1 mortgage lending team, so we can help you buy or refinance here locally or anywhere from the mountains to the coast. Last year, my team helped 1,500 North Carolina families refinance or buy the home of their dreams. Find out how today. Visit CIMGINC.com for details. CIMG, lending on a first-name basis. Go Heels!
If you're more than someone who just checks the scores, I want to introduce you to the place for Tar Heel sports discussion, analysis, and breaking news. Inside Carolina has been the center of the Tar Heel sporting universe for over 20 years, with a team of the best UNC sports reporters around, unrivaled insight, and a vast message board community for round-the-clock discussion with other Tar Heel fans. Your game day begins and ends with InsideCarolina.com.
At Mack Orthodontics, Dr. Kervin Mack is the heart of the organization. Here he is with more.
I came to the realization that I was interested in orthodontics because I really liked working with young people. And you get to build a relationship with them. The first thing I say when people come in for any patient exam is, tell me about yourself. I want to know about you. I'm in the business of taking care of people and just happen to work on teeth.
Mack Orthodontics in Hillsborough and Burlington. Start loving your smile. Learn more at mackortho.com.
Phase 1 is complete with the Link Linden Apartments and Gwendolyn Office Building, and Phase 2 is underway in the redevelopment of Glen Lennox by Grubb Properties. Read about the bike and bus-friendly amenities, open green space, and new landscaping, plus retail expansion to buttress the original Glen Lennox Shopping Center. Also learn more about Grubb's new Life and Science building on East Rosemary Street. It's all in Glen Lennox Stories in the Town Square section of chapelboro.com.
Stop by the record shop and hang with me, Victor Lewis, weekdays from 11 to 2 right here on 97.9 The Hill. I'm playing all sorts of things you want to hear, from local artists just getting started to all-time indie classics and more. The record shop is open and playing music for folks who love music, and I'll see you there.
You're listening to Inside Carolina Live with Tommy Ashley and Joey Powell on 97.9 The Hill, WCHL, the flagship station for Tar Heel sports.
All right, welcome back. Inside Carolina Live, Saturday, March the 18th. Tommy, I know a lot of people were not happy about the men's draw, right? They're mad. They want to be mad online. They want to be mad in real life. There's a lot of people that were mad about the women's draw, too. The Lady Tar Heels, as many folks seem to think, really, were they underseeded? And we're going to talk with play-by-play for the Lady Tar Heels right now as he comes to us live from beautiful Columbus, Ohio. Matt, how you doing, man?
Doing great. How are you guys? Thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, so first impressions, how did you feel about the Lady Tar Heels getting a 6th seed and drawing the winner, which we now know to be St. John's, for Purdue and St. John's? What's your feeling about, is this where you felt like the Lady Tar Heels would be? Because I know a lot of people, them included, expected to host.
Yeah, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I did not expect to be making a trip to Columbus, Ohio this week. The general feeling around the program was that the team was on what you could call the host bubble, around 16th or 17th nationally, right after that loss to Duke in the quarterfinals of the ACC tournament. But then as other results started to roll in throughout tournament week, Colorado losing, Oklahoma losing, Villanova not winning the Big East, you started to feel like, okay, this is going to happen. This team is going to be a host. They're going to be a 4 seed, probably the last 4 seed. But even if that didn't happen, then they'll probably be a 5 and may get a favorable draw, much like last year, where they were a 5, but were sent to, quote unquote, the weakest 4. So I certainly was far from alone in being absolutely stunned when it popped up that Carolina was a 6th seed. But there are metrics, that you can look at, most notably performance over the last 10 games, performance in the conference tournament. And it's pretty apparent that the selection committee utilized those metrics as what they were going to use to be a major factor in giving the Tar Heels the 6th seed. And then not only that, it's a 6th seed against a potential, second round opponent in Ohio State, where that's a Buckeyes team that started 19-0 this year, spent a lot of time in the national top 10. And this St. John's matchup, St. John's beat UConn. They've only lost 8 games on the season. And, it's not a mid-major. It's a Big East team right from the jump. So it is a tough draw for Carolina.
Talking to Matt Krause, play-by-play for UNC women. Matt, when you look at the draw, Carolina got screwed in 2 forms, I think. One, they got the 6 when they expected to host, and Courtney Banghart was none too pleased about that and sort of laid out why she felt like her team should host. But you mentioned St. John's. Not only do they not know who they were going to play until Wednesday night, or Thursday night, I guess.
Yeah.
They have to prepare for both teams going into it. Then they get the normal 2-day, get ready for the team you're playing. But St. John's gets that game first. And I've always felt like the second round is where teams really hit their stride. We see in the men's tournament, especially, sometimes those first round games are ugly because teams have been off for a little bit. Well, in the women's, Carolina's been off for longer than the normal break here. So talk about that a little bit. You mentioned St. John's has beaten UConn. They were 19-0. Now they've, 8-8 or 6-8 since then. Either way, this team is a really good basketball team, and North Carolina's got pretty much everything going against it going into it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Tommy. I mean, you look at what St. John's was able to get accomplished in their win over Purdue. It was a 66-64 game that was a lot more lopsided than that final score indicated. St. John's was outscored by 10 in the 4th quarter by Purdue, but the Red Storm, in that comeback by the Boilermakers, they had a weird technical foul call that enabled Purdue to go on a little bit of a run. So it was a much more heavily slanted game than the final score indicates. And I think you've got a really valid point about that idea of being off. So in the women's game, so many of these major conferences, it's all of the major conferences except for the Big 12, have their league tournament the week before the men's. So Carolina's last game was Friday, March 3rd. We're sitting here talking, it's March 18th. That's over 2 weeks between games. And St. John's had the opportunity to shake off their rust and to be able to get into the flow of tournament basketball. And so they've got that advantage. And so you would expect them to come out in this game, with just a greater sense of comfort with the venue, with the concept of playing in the NCAA tournament. And that's something Carolina is going to have to be up to speed on pretty quickly. And that point on the scouting aspect, there's so much resources that go in behind the scenes on being able to scout these opponents and prepare, and especially at tournament, you're doing these scouts for opponents that you could potentially see. And by facing a first four winner, Carolina's staff had to scout 4 opponents this week: Purdue, St. John's, Ohio State, and James Madison, which is the other first round game today, Ohio State and JMU. So it's extra work. It's an opponent that's got its feet underneath it already in a tournament setting. And like I said before, you see sometimes a mid-major team, granted a really good mid-major team, on these 12 or 13 lines. St. John's is not that. They're a Big East team that finished in the top half of perhaps the most competitive Big East conference on the women's side in many, many years. And they're led by the Big East Coach of the Year and Joe Tardamella. So this is no cakewalk for Carolina.
We're talking with Matt Krause, play-by-play for the UNC women's basketball team. Matt, this North Carolina squad has really shown how good they can be when they're all available and when they're all healthy. Do you get the sense that they're starting to get back together to be the same unit that was really good in January before they lost a couple players for a few games?
Joey, I do get that vibe, but it's not just the fact that it's the group that was together in January. This is the group that Courtney Banghart, at the start of practice way back in the fall, thought she was going to have for this year, because Kayla McPherson, who missed all of last season rehabbing an injury that she sustained in her senior year of high school, she injured her other leg in preseason practice. And so Kayla didn't debut for Carolina until January 29th against Clemson. Well, at that point, Eva Hodgson was already out on, I think at that point, the second or third of the 8 games that she missed due to the upper body condition. So it wasn't until the Virginia Tech game, second to last game of the regular season, that Hodgson, McPherson, and Alyssa Usby were all available to play together. And so that's 27 games of a 29-game regular season where one of that trio was out. And so, yes, you do go through some growing pains trying to figure out, quote unquote, the new rotation. But at the end of the day, you've got younger players in McPherson, in a Tiani Key, in a Paulina Paris, Destiny Adams, that have stepped up and played meaningful minutes for this team when Hodgson and Usby were out. And so now there's more options than ever for the Tar Heels here at NCAA tournament time.
And Matt, when you go back and look at what this team has done this year in really close games, for some reason, Virginia Tech seems to have a really good recipe at the end of games against the Tar Heels, but they've done fairly well in close games the rest of the season. They've also beat some pretty strong clubs, and you have to think that would work in their favor. How do you think that they're considering their experience in close games this past season as they move into this tilt against St. John's?
Yeah, I think it's a really important aspect of this team's DNA. You look, even going back to the PhilNet Invitational in Portland, yes, Carolina won that prestigious event over Thanksgiving, but trailed both of those games to Oregon and Iowa State for more than 30 minutes and had to make double-digit comebacks in both. So those were close wins in which Carolina was able to battle out of an early hole. But then the marquee wins through ACC play, the 3 big home wins in a row in January, the Notre Dame, NC State, and Duke, and then obviously the road triumph over at Duke right at the end of the regular season. These are all narrow, grinded out games, that possession game where it feels like every bucket is magnified. That's just the way that games in March are played, especially these kind of first round games between, in this case, a 6 versus an 11. It's a quality matchup. And so Carolina knows how to close out tough games. The road game at Duke, ending that game by being solid at the free throw line. I think that's going to be really important in this St. John's game. And just being able to earn stops when it matters. It's something that this team has done well all year long.
Talking to Matt Krause, play-by-play UNC women's. The Lady Tar Heels play St. John's in Columbus, Ohio 4 p.m. today on ESPN. Ohio State, James Madison, the first game in that region or in that hosting site at 1:30. Matt, when you look at these teams, and I was sort of comparing stat-wise, and a lot of times stats can be misleading and all, but you've got teams. St. John's is a little better shooting the basketball stat-wise and all. Aside from Deja Kelly, who's always North Carolina's focal point, at least by the media and oftentimes by other teams, aside from her, who on this North Carolina team can really match up with Everett or Bailey from St. John's and sort of limit their opportunities? Because I believe if my math is correct, St. John's hit 11 threes against Purdue, and they only averaged 6 or so a game. Obviously, if teams get hot, it's trouble. But how does Carolina match up with those two? And who for North Carolina can sort of step up here and make some shots? Because we've seen you mentioned grinded out games, and we've seen a lot of those lately for North Carolina, some not so pretty, some good basketball. Give me some key players for Carolina today as they face I was going to say the Redmond, but St. John's.
Yeah, the red storm from St. John's. Yeah, there's a storm brewing. And it's a really good point that you bring up about the 3-point shooting, because St. John's did hit 11 against Purdue. They only hit double-digit threes once in Big East play, and that was one game against Georgetown where they hit 10. Season high was all the way back in November against UTSA, and their Thanksgiving tournament they hit 12. So the 11 threes is more an anomaly than what you're going to see from St. John's in a game-in, game-out basis. But you're right. Jayla Everett is a very, very talented player, and she's a player that Carolina is familiar with because she spent the last 2 years at Pitt before transferring to St. John's. So she has played the Tar Heels. Carolina has prepared for her in the last couple of seasons, and they're very familiar with her. So I think it's really important for a couple of these fellow junior class members alongside Deja Kelly to have a big game in Kennedy Todd Williams and Alyssa Usby. I mean, obviously, Usby is such a versatile player who can do a little bit of everything on the offensive and defensive ends. You love to see her speed play a factor on the offensive side of the ball and in transition. When she's playing well offensively on the transition side of things, it really helps this offense thrive. But on the defensive end, she's going to need to be physical on the glass and be that presence that she is. Meanwhile, Kennedy Todd Williams, who's such a talented on-ball defender, I would certainly imagine that she will be tasked with trying to lock up Jayla Everett here in this matchup today. So keep an eye on those two, number 1 and number 3 in the I was about to say Carolina blue, but Tar Heels says the designated home team will be in the white with Carolina blue today.
Courtney Banghart obviously has this program on the right path. The recruiting's been fantastic. I kind of like the edge that she brings as far as she's not afraid to hype up her team and tell folks about it at times. What does a run here in this 2023 tournament, without getting out over our skis because you have to play game by game, but what does a run do for her personally going forward in this program building process, you think?
Yeah, I think building is the operative word there. It continues the building process. Last year, it almost seems like, and this is just my opinion, that Carolina skipped a year of development. That's a good thing because it's a program that went from, Coach Banghart's first year where there wasn't a tournament because of COVID, but they wouldn't have made it anyway. And then the second year qualifying for the tournament, getting in the field, didn't win a game, and then jumped straight from that to a Sweet 16. So I don't think this program needs to validate last year. I don't think there's anyone out there that thinks last year was a fluke, but it's being able to stack accomplishments and turn her vision. Because if you think about it, this standout junior class and even the sophomore class to an extent, as she was recruiting that group, she was selling a vision of what Carolina can be under her leadership, combining the tradition from the previous coaching staff and some great historical periods in this program's history. But it's what can Carolina be now? And being able to go on a run this year would say, okay, We said this is going to be the division, went to a Sweet 16 last year. To be able to go to back-to-back Sweet 16s, that would be pretty cool. And then obviously, just the way that the bracket shakes out, there's a very high chance that if Carolina is to make it further than the Sweet 16 this year, they'll have a win over UConn doing so, because it seems unlikely that anybody but UConn would be that Sweet 16 opponent out in Seattle. So just that building process and continuing to stack accomplishments as this veteran group continues to add to their legacy at Carolina.
All right, Matt, last question before we let you get out of here. Any chance this team gets caught looking ahead? I mean, they are in Columbus. They are in, Ohio State's building. They're going to get a chance to see Ohio State early. Any chance they get caught looking ahead towards, a UConn and Ohio State game, something like that?
I mean, yeah, this is not a cakewalk matchup. You just think back to last year when Carolina made the Sweet 16 in a similar spot, going on the road to Tucson. And the first game of that weekend, which was against Stephen F. Austin, one of those, elite mid-major league champions, that was more of a struggle for the Tar Heels than the Arizona game, the true road game in the second round, because like we talked about earlier, that idea of getting your feet wet in a tournament setting matters. And St. John's has already had that advantage. So we know that St. John's can get hot from the field. We know that they're a team that plays hard. We know they've got big wins. And so if, St. John's comes out, and I think they will, playing with figurative house money, right, and having that experience already under their belt, then Carolina is going to have to be ready to match that intensity from the jump, because it's a tough team to dig out of a big hole against. So Carolina is going to have to play well right from the get-go and play a full 40 minutes. Otherwise, St. John's could really give them a run for their money.
He's Matt Krause, play-by-play for the UNC Lady Tar Heels, who are taking on St. John's in the NCAA tournament. Matt, good luck to you this weekend. I hope you get to see two games from the Tar Heels and get to call two games. And hopefully after this weekend, you're considering making your next move and who the Tar Heels' next opponent will be.
Fingers crossed, guys. Thanks so much for having me on. Always love talking to you.
All right. We'll be right back and take a quick break here on Inside Carolina Live. I'm Joey Powell. He's Tommy Ashley. You're listening to 97.9 The Hill, WCHL.
Hey, it's Trey Boston, and you're listening to Inside Carolina Live.
The Casual Pint is your place for craft beer. Choose among 35 rotating taps. With a wide variety of styles, there's something for everyone. What's your favorite style? Don't quite know? Sample before you select your pint or try a flight today. Wanting to take beer to go? Choose from 200 plus beers in their cooler to create your mix of six, or fill a crowler or growler from the tap wall. All at the Casual Pint, 201 South Elliott Road, Chapel Hill.
97.9 The Hill is proud to launch a new exclusive radio presentation, The Buzz at Blue Hill, in partnership with Trinsic Residential Group. Here is Ryan Stewart, Managing Director, with more.
Hi, I'm Ryan Stewart of Trinsic Residential Group. With numerous projects in and around Chapel Hill, I'm especially excited about one of our upcoming projects, Aura Blue Hill, near the new Elliott Road extension. The Blue Hill district between Whole Foods and Food Lion is undergoing renewal and transformation. What is emerging is a blend of pleasant walking experiences, a mix of commercial uses, upper story residences, bike paths, and sidewalk cafes. Trinsic is proud to sponsor an exclusive interview series on 97.9 The Hill, The Buzz at Blue Hill. Each month you will hear from residents and business people who live, work, and play in Chapel Hill's most dynamic and developing neighborhood. So tune in the second Wednesday of each month at 7:30 a.m. for The Buzz at Blue Hill, presented by Trinsic Residential Group, and find out more about Blue Hill.
Learn more about The Buzz at Blue Hill on chapelboro.com.
Tired of paying too much for insurance that just doesn't fit your needs? At All About Insurance, we shop your insurance with multiple carriers to get the best deal for you. Nationwide, AAA, Travelers, The Hartford, auto owners, and more. All About Insurance has got you covered whether you need auto, home, life, health, business, or renter's insurance. We can even cover your boat and motorcycle. Come see us in Chapel Hill at 1289 Fordham Boulevard. Call 919-933-4000 or visit allaboutinsurance.com. One call, we can shop them all. We know all about insurance, so you don't have to.
When Andy Dufresne escaped from Shawshank with all of the warden's money, just where do you think he went? Well, yes, he went to Mexico. But first, he had to go see John Stillman at Rosewood Wealth Management. And if you want your money to last, you should go see John, too.
Shawshank Redemption is a fictional story, and Ellis Redding isn't real. However, Carolina Wealth Stewards doing business as Rosewood Wealth Management is in fact a real registered investment advisor with the state of North Carolina.
30 years ago, my father and I founded VRC Limited. The Triangle real estate market has changed a lot since then, but the dedicated team of property professionals at VRC Limited still provide highly personalized services for our clients. Hi, I'm Randy Voller. Whether you're a first-time buyer or a savvy investor, the experienced and knowledgeable agents at VRC Limited are ready to help you buy and sell land and homes.
VRC Limited, the best place to find your home. Online at vrclimited.com.
You're listening to Inside Carolina Live with Tommy Ashley and Joey Powell on 97.9 The Hill, WCHL, the flagship station for Tar Heel sports.
Welcome back. Appreciate you making us a part of your Saturday here on Inside Carolina Live. Tommy, we've had a really strong run of champions, if not championship basketball. And we felt like we'd extend that today. We'll go to the 05 squad. Baltimore's finest, Melvin Scott. Melvin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys?
If I was any better, I would be you shooting against NC State in Raleigh your senior year. Melvin, listen, man, I think one of the hot topics that everybody has talked about is kind of how this season ended for Carolina, but not in wins and losses. The fact that they made a choice, whether it was Coach Davis's choice or the team's choice or whomever you choose to believe there. They made a choice to not play in the NIT tournament. And that point itself has been kind of beaten to death. That's not what we're going for. I would love to ask you, as a guy who played in both the NIT, but also got to the mountaintop, getting a ring in the NCAAs, how does that process for you? How does that go through your head? How does that hit you?
Obviously it's different, right? I think we're on the outside looking in. So obviously the coaching staff and the guys, they know what's best for what they're dealing with as far as the mentality, injuries, wherever they are. For me, my experience is, when we played in it, some guys really didn't want to do it, right? But a guy like me, I love to play basketball. I love to compete. My whole life I had to fight and compete for things. So I was no stranger to that. To put on that jersey, a guy like me, where I'm from, Baltimore, Maryland, not a lot of guys get that opportunity to be recruited to come to a school like UNC. Michael Jordan was my idol. I looked up to him, and it was a dream come true for me to be able to sign and put the jersey on. So for guys that, it's their last go-around, not to be able to put the jersey on again, I think about those guys first, about us not going into the NIT. And just for me personally, I just love to play. And when we played in it, I gave it my all. I played well, and I was just trying to prove myself. And then the next year, Coach Roy Williams got the job. So I would like to think, the way I played in the NIT kind of catapulted me or got me into the next role the next year and starting, because I played really well. So for my personal reason, I always love to play. But I guess Coach and the guys know what's best for the team right now.
A lot of people would say they don't expect a kid from Federal Hill to be turning down any opportunity to hoop, right? So, Melvin, another question I'd ask you is this team is obviously dealing with some turnover right now and some turmoil just because of the way the season went. Nobody was really happy with the results inside the Smith Center. You faced some adversity in your career.
Yes.
What do you think the mindset is for some of these kids who they're really making hard choices right now? Some have opted to leave the program because they feel like, it's better for their situation if they go somewhere else. There are some kids who are opting to stay with the program for the same reasons. What was your mental approach, and did you ever consider anything like that? And I guess the second part would be, how would you approach it if one of your teammates was making a decision to opt out of the program and go somewhere where he thought it would be better fit for him?
Yeah, again, times are so much different now. When I played, there were some guys weren't happy with their roles or whatever. And they talked about, I might transfer or whatever. And But now, it's a wild, wild west. Like everybody's have so much power and leverage as players that you can go in the transfer portal in any day and play right away, wherever school you go to. So I think the times have changed. The position of the players and power has changed. I think my advice would be to just take a breath and not make any decision based on emotions. They're never the right decisions. Adversity is going to happen in basketball. UNC, everybody expect us to win. When you sign to come to Carolina, all you're thinking is national championships, NCAA tournaments. But there have been some tough years there, and I've endured those. And I tell you what, there is a brighter day, always, and not just on the basketball court. In life, life is hard. It's not easy, and I think some know how to deal with it. Some don't. Some have, different options or escape routes, whoever wants to see it as. But I would like to think that families and players and coaches know what's best for their situation.
We're talking to Melvin Scott, 2005 national champion, North Carolina guard. Melvin and Jawad and Jackie Manuel certainly have as much leverage to discuss what's going on these days as anybody that's ever been in the North Carolina basketball program. Melvin, you saw it all, literally, at North Carolina while you were there. Let me sort of ask a little bit about your journey. And you and I talked back on the Next Level with Greg Barnes and Will Blythe a month or so ago, and I think folks need to check that out if they haven't watched it, because it's a fabulous interview. But I asked you about the bench question, and you had a great answer and a great response, and I kind of want to revisit that. A lot of guys go to college expecting they're going to play, and they're going to play a lot. And when you get somewhere, you realize that might not be the case. Well, these days, you can pack up and leave and go play somewhere else. Wasn't really like that back when you were at North Carolina. Just sort of talk about your journey from getting to Carolina, the struggles that you guys endured as a team, and they're well documented. And I'm sure not to the extent that it was actually, but then going from that to a starter, and then you weren't a starter, but you were a national champion. Just sort of share some of that with us, because I think it's fascinating to listen to.
Yeah, I think one thing, when I was in high school, in that era, I was one of the best players in Maryland and on the East Coast. When you go to college, everybody's thinking good. And the first time I saw Marvin Williams run up and down the basketball court, I revisited that time I saw 6'8" guys that's faster than I am. That's mind-boggling. That's mind-blowing. So, to get on that next level and everyone as good as you are, I mean, you guys have a certain level of maturity and like, oh man, all right, let me revisit this. And to take a step back, when Coach Daugherty recruited me, he said that I need you to play some point guard. And I've never played point guard in my life. I was a point guard trapped in a two-guard body. Like I was a two-guard trapped in a point guard's body. I mean, just 6'2", and I played two-guard all my life. But just the opportunity to put that jersey on and sign with Carolina, I said, I'll do it. I'll figure it out. Right? So I'll do whatever it takes. Coming out the bench was not easy. But I'm like, you know what? If it's for the betterment of the team, and when I understand about winning and buying into winning, and everybody benefits from winning, it wasn't easy to do. But once I settled in, it's like, all right, I can do this. And you got the brothers around you, your teammates that try to help you get through it. So that's important. I think nowadays when coaches recruit or sell that pitch, and I hear stories about Dean Smith talking to Michael Jordan and all these highly recruited guys, and I can't promise you'll start. It's the stories I hear that Coach Smith would tell guys, but I promise you'll get better, and when you leave here, you'll be a better player, a better person. And so I think that part, just being brutally honest with these kids, and hey man, look, you're the man from where you're from, but here we got a group of guys that were the men where they're from, and just if it's not about the team and what's on the front of that jersey, then you're probably in the wrong place.
That is fascinating to listen to you describe it. Hubert Davis doesn't play the bench that much. It is what it is 2 years in, but tell me about having to be relied on to make some foul shots on the biggest stage that you had to do in the NCAA tournament when you're not playing 35, 45, 30 or 40 minutes a game like some of these guys. I mean, how difficult was that, A? And then B, your mindset. You mentioned as long as we win. I'll never forget Max Owens told me in the locker room 23 years ago, I guess, whenever he was there, he wasn't playing much. He said, I do not care as long as we win. Mm-hmm. As long as we win. It changes if we're not winning, but as long as we win. And so just sort of walk us through that NCAA tournament and sort of the weight that was placed on your shoulders there, and you were ready to answer the bell when it happened.
Yeah, I think my upbringing, I was raised by a single mom, strong lady, very prideful, had character, always wanted to do the right thing. And just, make it, it's the saying, if you make it out of Baltimore, you can make it anywhere. And so, again, all my life I've been tested. It has been a roller coaster. And being able to deal with the highs and the lows and being even killed, I think that prepared me for that moment. I think, staying the course, like life is going to happen to you. It's what you decide to do with it. It's funny, leading up into the NCAA, I had some friends who would come to the Smith Center with me and shoot at night. And they're goofing off. They're running into the support system. They're making noises. They're pulling their shorts down. And I'm shooting free throws, and I'm laughing. And I'm just like, what are you guys doing? It's like, you never know what'll happen. I'm like, yeah, the fans probably can't pull their pants down while I'm shooting free throws. I mean, maybe at Duke, but no, what are we doing, guys? And you almost killed yourself running into the support system. But we talk about that when we all get together, and you never know when your moment's going to come. That's why you got to stay ready. Just preparation. And it's funny because I always talk about my son, because I try to, the steps I missed, I revisit those with him, and he's shooting free throws this morning. We get a lot of 6 a.m.s in, and I'm like, son, if you're practicing that shot the wrong way one time, like, we're wasting our time. You get nothing out of that. So do it the right way every single time. It's muscle memory, because you never know when your time is going to be called. And people just don't believe it's going to happen. Okay, I'm not going to go through the free throw line. And as a kid, I would dribble up 3, 2, 1, and if I miss, okay, I got fouled or something. We take it out. We do it again until I make it. And when I'm at the free throw line, as a kid, I painted the picture. We were playing against Duke. We were down 1, 2 free throws. And I'm making those shots, right? And I just always dreamed and always had this vision in my head. So I was always a dreamer and believer, no matter what the circumstances. I mean, people count me out my whole life, but I always believed deep down inside that if I got the opportunity, I would take advantage of it. And then that's what I try to instill in these young people that I coach and do skill training, and even the guys that are currently on the UNC team that I get a chance to talk with. People don't believe it, but every guy on that bench is so important. Developing your bench is so important because you never know when you're going to need them.
I love that perspective. One of the things I love about talking with former players, especially ones that have, like you guys got a ring, is trying to, I guess, extrapolate a little bit about what their difference is watching games as a fan when you're not actually, out there playing. So one of the things I want to ask you, share with us your thoughts this year, because you're a shooter. Share with us your thoughts this year in watching this team. They barely missed being the worst perimeter shooting team in Carolina basketball history by a couple of percentage points. There was a point in February where they were the worst shooting perimeter team in Carolina history. What is going through your head as a shooter when you're watching that team struggle this year? And not necessarily just individual players. I mean, just the whole locker room struggled from beyond the arc as a whole.
Well, my saying is shooters don't think, we shoot. The moment you think, you're going to miss it. And I see what a lot of people don't see. It's the quality of shots. It's mental, right? A kid love to shoot the basketball. These kids can shoot. I've watched them at practice, hit 10 in a row, with hands in your face, guys running out. It's just the quality of shots. Guys working to get another guy's shot. And you'll see the good teams that shoot the ball well. They got 5 guys on the floor that's trying their best to get a guy a really great shot. And for me, I'm just like, I'll do anything to try to help these guys. If I have to volunteer my time to do shooting, which I do, to go over there and help in any capacity. And again, everybody think they have the remedy for it. And Coach Lebo and all those guys, I know that staff is working tremendously hard to help these guys. A lot of it is just mental. And that part fans don't understand. And quality of shots and pressing, like Caleb Love, like, a guy like him, he's supposed to be a highly a top pick in the NBA draft. Maybe people don't see that now. But those are pressures that's on these kids, and it's not easy. And when you're not winning, it's just compounding, and you're at UNC. And another thing that people don't understand, I played against Chris Paul. And Chris Paul and a lot of other guys wanted to come to UNC. Back in the day, you're so fortunate to get a scholarship to Carolina. And every single guy you play against wants that jersey or wanted that jersey. And I tell you guys, Chris Paul would try to run Raymond Felton. I mean, he wanted to play so well against Raymond Felton. And we had conversations like, Raymond, let me guard him because he's trying to go 100 miles an hour at you. He's trying I got him. I'm like, bro, trust me. And Raymond, he'll attest this. And not that I'm a better defender, but I think he's got more of an edge because they recruited you and not him. Not to say you're better or he's better. But when you put on the UNC jersey, every time you step on the floor, you're going to get everyone's A game. And I think guys, they don't understand that today. But it's a real thing. It's so real. You're going to get everybody's A game. You're going to get the coaches on the other side. Everybody wants to beat you. Like they can't sleep the night before because they see this logo. They want to beat you. Where is it? There it is. They want to. I'm sitting. No jokes aside. They want to beat you. My kids I coach now. What's up with your Tigers? Oh, they're not in the tournament. Like, bro, relax. Enjoy the tournament while you can. Enjoy it. Everyone wants to beat you because UNC's been on top for so daggone long.
Melvin, we appreciate you making time for us on a Saturday morning. Listen, I'm going to go ahead and plant the seed now. At some point, I want to do a live discussion of The Wire from a guy that lived in Baltimore. So at some point, we will do that. And I don't know how we'll position that for Inside Carolina, but it's absolutely the best TV show ever made. And so I would love to hear from a guy who lived that, that Baltimore experience. Maybe not that so much, but lived in Baltimore and saw that stuff. So we'll set that up for another time. Maybe if Tommy will ever watch The Wire, we'll let him in.
Hey, I watched The Wire.
You watched it?
Okay. All right. Fair enough. I thought it was one that you I thought it was one you blew us up on one show in the past where you said you hadn't seen it and you felt very proud that you hadn't seen it. Anyway, Melvin Scott, we appreciate it, man. We'll set something up in the very near future, but thanks for giving us some time and some perspective on a Saturday morning.
For sure, man. Thank you guys for having me.
All right, we'll be right back with more Inside Carolina Live on 97.9 The Hill, WCHL.
This is George Lynch, and you're listening to Inside Carolina Live at 97.9 The Hill.
At Oma's Jewelers in Eastgate Crossing, Jack and Ely are in the business of bringing joy to people's lives. Some words from Lori Doherty, a loyal customer.
The settings in my ring were compromised and the diamond had actually fallen out. I decided to take it to Oma's, and Ely and Jack were amazing. And there was no question in their mind that they would be able to save my ring, and not only save it, but make it better than it was.
Visit Oma's Jewelers in Eastgate Shopping Center or online at omasjewelers.com.
Come to the Ackland Art Museum to see Good Object, Bad Object, an exhibition of recent acquisitions of unconventional contemporary sculpture by artists such as Amalia Pica, Carl Andre, Annette Lignieu, Martin Creed, and Ronnie Horn. On view now through April 2nd. Find out more about the exhibition and related public programs at ackland.org. The Ackland is located at 101 South Columbia Street in downtown Chapel Hill. Admission to the Ackland is always free. The Ackland. Look close, think far.
Tired of working from home? Need space for your team to grow? Visit the Bull Building, just 10 minutes from downtown Chapel Hill and UNC. If you need an office for one person, two people, or a team space for 50, we have professional office space for you. When we think about where and how we work, times they are a-changin'. I'm Shayla with Bold Commercial Real Estate, inviting you to ditch the old way, jump on the bold way, and see how we can make your workspace the best it can be. Visit boldcre.com.
real magic is everywhere. It's in your mom's cooking, in 4-hour dinners with friends, in that first bite of something new, and in the fizz of a Coca-Cola. Now with so many options for less than $5, the Coca-Cola Value Collection will help you make the most out of every magic moment for so much less. Taste the magic for less with Coca-Cola.
Hello, this is Tony Hall, real estate broker at Tony Hall & Associates. Even with the slightly higher mortgage rates, the housing market continues to be quite strong. If you're thinking about selling, it's a great time to do so because there are so few homes on the market. Whether you're buying or selling, let our years of experience guide you through the process with ease. At Tony Hall & Associates, we don't just list houses, we sell them.
Hi, it's Jones Angel, voice of the Tar Heels, and you're listening to your flagship station for Tar Heel sports, 97.9 The Hill, WCHL, Chapel Hill.
Coming to you straight from the heart of Chapel Hill in the 97.9 The Hill WCHL studios from the independent voice of UNC sports, covering everything from Amos to Zwicker. This is Inside Carolina Live. And now the hosts of Inside Carolina Live, Tommy Ashley and Joey Powell.
Welcome back, Inside Carolina Live. I'm your host, Tommy Ashley. Joey Powell still in the transfer portal on spring break with the rest of the partiers. Got Dewey Burke with me. Dewey Burke, as you know, if you listen to this Inside Carolina Live, if you listen to our Inside Carolina podcast on the regular, is a regular featured post-game analyst. Dewey also provides content for the message boards and all, and just all-around asset to Inside Carolina. Dewey, I'm going to get you in here, and I'm going to get right to it. North Carolina season certainly not up to expectations. Hadn't really talked to you a lot since it ended. Have you had time to process what has happened over the last 6 months around the North Carolina basketball program?
I think I have, and I would take it longer than 6 months. I'd take it from the day after the Kansas loss all the way through today. Has been a pretty wild emotional roller coaster for fans, people on the Inside Carolina message boards, for former players, for the actual players and staff. And boy, it's challenging when you come up so short of expectations. We had such high hopes, such good feelings about this team and these kids coming back based on the ride they took us on. And one of the things I did in preparation for this time was I went and watched a couple of our podcasts from last year's tournament run. And we spoke after the St. Peter's game when they made the Final Four. And I sat right on this medium and said, this is the most remarkable thing I've seen since I've been a part of the program, that this team and these kids are in the Final Four. It was the most remarkable thing I'd seen. Just because it was so unexpected, 8 seed, the way of the regular season, they didn't really play great until much later in the year. And so you just had every expectation that they could carry that into this year, but with a chip on their shoulder because they didn't finish the job. And it just wasn't that way. There wasn't a sense of urgency. There wasn't a chip. There wasn't us against the world mentality to get back to the mountaintop like that 2017 team did, like that 2009 team did. But we're going to get into it and talk about why, playing style, the meshing of the kids, no Brady Manic. I understand all that. But that for me was always the hardest thing when we had these conversations was I just can't understand why they're not, as Coach Williams would say, ripping the nails out of the floor to get back where they were, to try to take the last step. Legends. And you just never saw that. You never saw that urgency, that effort. And That's hard for me to understand. It's hard for me to get because it's so foreign from my experience. We lost games. We got knocked out in the second round of the tournament when Tyler and those guys were freshmen, and we collapsed and lost to Georgetown in the Elite Eight. That's what happened. But man, there were at least a number of guys on those teams that they'd have died for the win. They'd have died for it. I just don't know that I saw that. So I could keep going, but let me let you ask me questions. So that, to sum it all up, the disappointment that these guys didn't play like they'd ripped the nails out of the floor was hard to watch.
Yeah, and my inclination listening to you talk, and we're speaking with Dewey Burke, of course, former North Carolina Tar Heel himself, and he mentioned 2006, 2007, 2008, even the Final Four Kansas game leading up to that 2009 championship. But my inclination is to ask, what has changed within the program, within these players to cause that? But I don't know if it's quite that simple. I don't know if it's an answer that you have. I don't know if it's an answer you've even thought about. I mean, it still means a lot. It still means as much to these guys, you would think. But without sort of calling out specific players, are we just in a different age where what you spoke of, ripping the nails out, is not as big a thing anymore? And then I look at other teams, and I've watched the tournament thus far. I watched Furman beat Virginia by ripping the nails out of the floor and coming up with a miracle. I've watched, other teams do it. I just struggle to find rationale and reason. And I wonder, from your perspective, can you find any to understand why that is the case in Chapel Hill right now?
No, and it's even more puzzling because of what we just discussed, is that they were a rebound away, a turned ankle away, a couple shots away from winning a national championship. Now, had they won the national championship, this same team doesn't come back. There are different players, and okay, understood. But they didn't win it. But like we talked about all year, they tasted it. They were right there. And so to not have that want to, it seems, I do not understand. I can't identify with that, not just because of, I'm not saying this because it's like that's how I felt, right? Because I didn't play, right? I tried my darndest in practice, but that was my job. But the guys I played with, not all of them, but most of them, man, there just was a level of effort that I just don't feel like was the same. And we even though it wasn't that long ago, it's getting longer and longer, but in 2006, 2007, no social media. I mean, we got kicked out of school for the stuff we did out on Franklin Street today, right? But nobody was taking pictures of us. We just did, right? Now these guys people are taking pictures of them, pictures with them. They're, fans, positive and negative, have a direct link to these guys on Instagram and Twitter. None of that existed. So the level of distraction today is certainly much different. But it's also very credible to say it's no different at any other school. Everybody's got the same distractions. It's the same social media. It's the same. So why did we play, you could argue, with some sense of entitlement, like we deserved to get back to that, we were just going to arrive in the tournament, and then that we could just do that again because we did it last year? I mean, there seemed to not be a grasp of the fight, that starts in May, right? And you're lifting weights today, those days, and getting workouts those days to fight for one possession in the ACC tournament against Virginia, or either game against Duke, or at home against Miami, at home against Pitt. Like you're fighting and doing the extra sprint and making 10 more free throws for 1 inch, one possession. Like you do one extra set with Jonas because it gets you ready for 1 inch. And it just never felt like we won that inch this year, this team.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've heard football players a lot talk about the inch, winning just an inch. It can make all the difference in the world. So it's a good reference there. You have talking about this team. I'll freely admit, and you and I have talked a lot, and it's exhausting when they lose. I know you feel it more than I do. A lot of people have said, how can you continue to talk about it? And quite frankly, I'm tired of talking about it, but it remains in the news and it remains relevant for everybody because it is Carolina basketball, especially here in March. Where, if I'm honest, watching the tournament these last few days is a little less stressful. Not having to wonder where Carolina's going and all that. So, at any rate, and somebody asked on the message board soon after Virginia lost, would you rather be Virginia or North Carolina at that moment? And you take Virginia every second, no matter who they lose to or what they lost to, whatever they were, seeded-wise. But anyway, I digress. Dewey, let me ask you about this, and this has sort of been the elephant in the room the last few days, and I am going to turn a little bit positive before we get out of here. But the NIT decision, for the life of me, and I've talked about it with multiple people, multiple former players, and certainly enough on Inside Carolina, I can't for the life of me understand why they would turn that down. No matter what's going on in Chapel Hill, it's just too big of opportunity to, one, play and get experience. Two, for players to put that uniform on, maybe for the last time. That is hard to believe that opportunity was passed up. What's your take, having been in the arena?
Yeah, so this is obviously a very foreign concept to me, right? I mean, every year I played, we made the tournament. We were, my senior year, we were 1 seed. We were the number 1 overall seed after winning the ACC tournament, right? So, I mean, that to where this team is, so there's a chasm there. So I cannot speak from any kind of experience on what it must have felt like to not even have a party at the head coach's house to watch Selection Sunday, because that never happened. I don't even know. I don't know what that's about. And so I can't pretend to stand in their shoes and get it that you're not even in. I don't even know what that's like. However, to the point that you made, I also can't fathom not taking the opportunity to put the jersey on. I would tell you confidently that, the guys I'm close with and still in touch with, that not a week or two after we were done, each of us at our various times, we would have practiced. We would have gone to practice if we could, just to still be in it. I'll never forget, I went to late night with Roy the October after I was done, when I graduated. And I was sitting in the stands, a couple rows up, and I was sitting with Jonas. And I remember turning to him saying, I literally am getting lightheaded with how I physically feel right now that I'm not out there with them, that I'm not a part of this. As a walk-on who never did anything on the floor, I had like a physical, whatever you want to call it, a chemical reaction inside me when I turned to Jonas. I said, I literally can't believe I'm not out there with them. And I think all the guys I played with, or almost every guy I played with, would give you some similar story. Like that when it was over, they would have done anything just to practice, just to be back together again. And so you think of that, and again, with the caveat that my experience and our experience is very different, I cannot at all understand it, and I never will. Because if you're Pete Nance, if you're Leaky, potentially Armando, obviously I know what everybody's saying, not sure what's going to ultimately happen, but if you're just be Leaky. If you are never putting that jersey on again. And maybe Leaky voted yes. We don't know. But that, I can't Anyway, that's what it reminded me of. When I saw that, I was like, man, I remember watching Late Night in October 2007 after I was done, and I had a chemical response inside me that I wasn't with my guys, that I wasn't out there, that I couldn't do it again. So that's the best I can give you is how I felt when it was done. And it was devastating.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you when you're talking about it, and I can see it when we've had these conversations. A couple more questions before I let you get out of here. This Dewey Burke, of course, former North Carolina point guard, walk-on, but still on the team. That's what I've always laughed at is people say, oh, so-and-so is just a walk-on. I'm like, yeah, you realize they're on Carolina basketball team. I mean.
No, it wasn't any fun. It wasn't any fun at all.
Let me ask you this. We've talked a lot about Hubert Davis and the approach and the transfer portal and the comings and goings, and Carolina's roster is going to look somewhat different next year. Regardless of who's on the team, how difficult is it going to be in your mind for Hubert to sort of get his sea legs back, to get his footing back after a year like this? Or do you think it's just sort of a natural progression for a new coach? And a lot of people have said North Carolina is not a program to get your feet wet coaching. I think Dean Smith did it 60 years ago or however long. But how difficult a process is that going to be for Hubert, knowing what you know, talking to who you talk to? Seems like it's going to be a chore for him to sort of put his stamp back on this program after what happened in year one and then what's happened this past year and now going forward. Seems like a tough job ahead for Coach Davis.
Yeah, there's no question about that. And it's puzzling because it's kind of he's a little bit in reverse, right? I mean, it's this year and then last year where we just struggled to gel and we couldn't get it all together and we struggled offensively, didn't shoot the ball well, the pieces didn't fit. You'd say, look, new coach, he's following a legend that won 3 national championships. Like, let's give the guy some time and let's, see what he's made of after a little more time. That would have made sense if this year was last year, but then we went and did what we did last year. So the expectations are sky high. And then for it to feel like such a flop, makes it extremely challenging to understand where it goes from here, because it felt like such a regression with many of the same players. And so, look, I think it's a very challenging situation to be in because the expectations don't change here. One of my favorite things to say when people ask about my experience at North Carolina. One of my favorite things to talk about is at the first practice every year, Coach Williams got us together and he said, guys, if you do what we tell you to do and we're together and we play the Carolina way and we have a chance to win the whole blessed thing. Here's the thing though. When we said it, we meant it. It was real. There's only 10 programs that they say that at the first practice and it's real. I mean, many of them say it and don't tell me you actually believe it. Don't tell me you actually believe it if you're Virginia Tech or pick your North Carolina. When we say that, we mean it. We mean it. We're here and we do what we're supposed to do and we play well and we go on a run. And we're trying to hang a banner and that's real. And I just don't think many programs say that. And so the expectations will not change for him, and for the staff and for all these guys. So I think whatever it was that was going on, and I don't know, for the team to decide they didn't want to play together anymore, NIT or not, speaks to challenges in the locker room, to not being together. And so his first job is to make sure that they're together, in my view. And then they got to find a way to shoot the ball better, of course. And there are X and O things and on the court. But yeah, sure. They got to get the portal. They got to get some guys that can put the ball in the back. All of those things are true. But before that, to me, a team that says, I don't want to play in the NIT wasn't together. They just weren't. They couldn't have been. And so that is step one for Coach Davis and the staff, is to get these guys back together. That was interesting. You heard him say so many times last year, especially on the run, I've loved coaching this team and how we're together, and ignore all sideshow distractions, and they built around that mantra. And I just didn't feel like it ever got there this year. They never got cohesive. They were never together. It never looked fun. They never got gritty together. The weight of it, it's like it knocked them over. They just never, they were not together. And he's got to get them together.
Indeed he does. And like we talked about, who knows what the roster will ultimately look like. But it doesn't matter. The expectations at North Carolina are going to be very high. I think R.J. Davis caught some flack for saying championship or bust before this prior season. That's the thing every year in Chapel Hill.
That's who we are. Guys.
Indeed. That's Dewey Burke. This has been Inside Carolina Live. We'll be right back after the break with Inside Carolina Takeover, Johnny T-shirt Takeover. Join me, Tommy Ashley, Joey Powell, currently in the portal. Let's take a vote. Where should Joey transfer to? Should he come back next week for March 25th show? We'll see. Appreciate it, Dewey, and we'll be right back here on 97.9 The Hill.
I'm Ryan Switzer, and you're listening to Inside Carolina Live.
Hello, friends. This is Mark Pons. A clean car is a happy car. And at Chapel Hill Tire, we want you driving clean and happy. That's why we now offer expert car wash and detailing services with 4 wash and detail options that all include a hand wash, complete vacuum, wheel cleaning, and tire shine. And we offer free pickup and delivery service for car wash and detail at all 10 of our Triangle locations. Schedule your appointment at chapelhilltire.com. Drive happy and clean, Chapel Hill.
What's up? It's Leaky Black. Thursdays are Lockdown Thursdays at Town Hall Grill in Chapel Hill, and Town Hall Burger and Beer in Raleigh, Holly Springs, Durham, and Briar Chapel. All day long, every Thursday, you can try a basket of my lockdown chicken tenders with just the right amount of sweetness and heat for only $10. Head to Town Hall Grill or Town Hall Burger and Beer and just tell them Leaky sent you.
All About Insurance is proud to announce an exciting partnership with Cincinnati Insurance, the high-value and high-net-worth insurance company. We specialize in luxury homes and collections such as exotic cars, jewelry, fine wine, and more. Cincinnati is an A-plus rated carrier with one of the best and most comprehensive homeowners insurance packages for high-net-worth individuals. Isn't it time you had the insurance that fits your exquisite lifestyle? Call All About Insurance for a consultation at 919-933-4000 or visit allaboutinsurance.com.
Did you know the Casual Pint has a delicious pub food menu paired with local beer? Come see why everyone raves about the best brats in town. Their loaded Sidewinder fries with toppings of your choice are everyone's favorite. Which one will you choose? Their crispy flatbreads will make your mouth water, and oh, the wings! Starting your meal with a large pretzel with beer cheese and ending with a Nightingale ice cream sandwich will surely make your night. All at the Casual Pint, 201 South Elliott Road, Chapel Hill.
Hi, I'm Trevor Holman of Trevor Holman Photography, and I know how putting your best foot forward can help you get ahead. That's why I've dedicated my talents as a visual storyteller to providing quality professional headshots for individuals, businesses, and industry leaders in the Triangle. Learn how your look can put your best foot forward with my column, Best Foot Forward, at the end of each month on chapelboro.com or visit trevorholmanphoto.com to book your session with me today.
Hi, it's Andrew Stuckey. Join me every weekday at 2 p.m. for Indie with Andy, where I play the best of the latest indie releases, dive down the occasional genre rabbit hole, and play your requests. We'll listen to a wide variety of music from across genres and time periods, and hopefully we'll learn something new about the music along the way. It's Indie with Andy, weekdays at 2 p.m. on 97.9 The Hill.
You're listening to Inside Carolina Live with Tommy Ashley and Joey Powell on 97.9 The Hill, WCHL, the flagship station for Tar Heel sports.
Welcome back. Inside Carolina Live. Tommy, Ashley, Brighton McConnell, Daniel Myrick on the boards is the IC Takeover, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-Shirt.com. We've got some questions from the viewers, listeners, watchers, readers, everybody that's paying attention inside Carolina. Shout out to the usual suspects. Shout out to everybody that's new in the chat. We've had some successful podcasts and YouTube streams over the last few weeks. It's amazing to me how the highs of highs and the lows of lows really bring the folks out. You can tell the passionate fan base.
Misery enjoys company, Tommy. There's no doubt about that.
I will say this. Our biggest shows that I've ever been a part of, one was that Final Four show we did from down there on Sunday after Carolina beat Duke. And then the other two are the ones we did this week, the ones we did right after Carolina declined the NIT bid. I thought it was interesting, and we'll get to some questions here, but Brighton, I want your take. Dewey Burke, I've talked to him a ton over the last 10 years or so. You can hear, and he speaks for a lot of the former guys. I mean, these guys talk all the time. If you paid attention inside Carolina, you know there's a family chat, as they call it, where nearly everybody, nearly every former player is on. And those guys are feeling it now. And you can just hear it in Dewey's voice how difficult not only this year, but the last couple of years have been, or the last 4 years have been, to see their team struggle.
Yeah, there's no doubt that it has to be tough, especially at this time where the college basketball landscape is shifting so much, and it seems to be flattening. We know that Carolina is not the only blue blood program that has not been as competitive as it typically is in the last little bit, and you see all of these other schools starting to really, really put some money behind it. NIL completely changes how people are approaching it. It makes it so, what we as Carolina fans, as Carolina alumni, players, wherever you fit into the Carolina family, it just makes it so it's tough to see that change. And it does feel like the Carolina men's basketball program, its prominence is slipping in some ways, and change is just hard to deal with across the board. But when you bring in change with the highs and lows of fandom, boy, it does get really, really tough.
Yeah, and I think what something we all need to realize is that when you have a coaching change and you go from a legend to a new guy or a different guy, there's going to be some differences. Now, I understand that a lot of the fan base is watching what's going on down the road. And look, if we're being honest, it's like the door has just opened wide for John Shire and the Duke Blue Devils in this NCAA tournament. They've still got to win games, but they have an opportunity. I think that exacerbates the problem when Carolina struggles. But somebody in the chat just posted, we're a year away from, or a year ahead of Carolina ending a legendary career twice. It's a thin line between winning and losing, and that's what you're seeing now. So North Carolina's got some work. Let me go ahead.
I think too, it's definitely some recency stuff in terms of last year. Everybody was just coasting on some pretty amazing wins over Duke, and it covered up a lot of what people were feeling beforehand. This season, it's brought back a lot of the same concerns that people had around the program, and that I think the program itself has, that kind of started up after the 2018-2019 season. One thing too, I'm trying to do a better job personally of just being able to kind of appreciate things and look back in hindsight, not too wistfully, but to Dewey's point too, if the results this year and last year had been flipped, we would be approaching it differently. But I also now think back to that run to the 2017 championship for the Tar Heels in a completely different light. How tough was it to lose in the 2016 title game that way on that shot with a buzzer beater, to then lose kind of your heart and soul of Marcus Page and Bryce Johnson, but then for next year's team to be able to turn around, come back, certainly based on some luck and some pretty incredible shooting, thinking about the Luke May shot to beat Kentucky. But the mental fortitude you have to have, and the attitude as a program, as players out on the court, as a fan base, to then make it all the way back and then to win that 2017 championship. I'm just, and that's one that happened while I was in school at Carolina. So that's always going to have a special place in my heart. But I'm looking at that through a completely different light based on the struggles that this year's Tar Heel team had, not only making it back to the national championship game, making it back to the Final Four, which they said was their goal this year, but then when you fall short of making the big dance entirely, it just brings a different level of appreciation to what past Carolina teams have done.
Absolutely. I mean, if you go back, and I always show my age doing this stuff, but if you go back and look at the national championship seasons, they were preceded by closes. Like, we got close, or, we are almost there. You always hear players say, we were at the mountaintop and we didn't get there. 81, lost in the national championship game. 82, won the national championship. 91, lost in the Final Four to Kansas. Watched Duke win it back to back. 93, won the national championship. 05 was different. They kind of handled business when they had struggled. But 08, Final Four, didn't get it done. The key to those years, though, aside from the 05 championship, is that those teams were great the year before, too. Like, this team, the expectations, and I do think Dewey's point that you pointed out, you flip those years here, and this is a completely different conversation. But I think what my point that I'm making also makes it seem like, why couldn't these guys get it together?
Yes.
And
yes.
You were there. And I think when this is all said and done, whenever this is in the rearview mirror, that'll be the biggest thing for me is you were there. I've said it before. You touched the golden chalice. You were 20 minutes away from it. And then for some reason, you didn't pop up and want it as bad, or didn't seem to want it as bad. It's easy to say it. I mean, actions speak louder than words, right? So anyway, it's time to move forward a little bit, and we can certainly discuss it. Let me say a couple words about Johnny T-Shirt, though.
Oh, please.
Joey's great at these, and I just kind of wing them. But Johnny T-Shirt, JohnnyT-shirt.com, they're no matter whether Carolina wins or loses, you can go to Johnny T-Shirt and you get the same great customer service online or in person. You can get the same great gear, and you can always get an Inside Carolina discount. I've rolled in there and I'll be like, I'm Tommy from Inside Carolina, and they're like, what's the code? And I'm like, and they're like, we know who you are. We know you're a premium member. So take care of them. They take care of us. Let's give away a gift card here. Let's get to some questions. I'm going to ask one first, and Brighton, I know you have one, but Steve Williams, who's a regular, how can a recruit or a transfer have any confidence that going to Carolina is going to create value in the basketball marketplace? Brady Manick was a finished product. Who has improved under Hubert Davis? This is something we talked about. I'll let you answer it first. That's one of the biggest concerns for me watching this team. How many people have gotten better in their time at Carolina? That is a tangible, visible discussion and results that we've seen. Brighton, your take on, at some point you sell a vision, but when you start getting years under your belt, you start selling a product. And that is a concern, and that's why this coming season is so big for Hubert Davis.
Yes, there's no doubt about that. If you look at the 2-year sample size we have, the little bit that we know of Hubert Davis's coaching style, and again, maybe it's just with the personnel he has, but this year they had a bench that had more depth, younger talent, certainly than the first year, and yet it was still pretty tight rotation. I think Steve's question is the question that a lot of folks are asking, and I hope that are being asked within the Carolina program as well, because in the end, that's how you end up having a winning program, is what do you do to not only develop the talent that comes in, but then also maximize the pieces that are on your team, whether those are incoming guys who are mostly a finished product or the young hotshot recruits. I really think that next season is kind of make and break in that way, because if Hubert's coaching style continues to be along the lines of tight rotation, relying heavily on the starting five, then you get into the territory of, well, that's 3 seasons in a row where the bench, everybody who's sitting on the bench, and you hear the comments from Styles, and you see Nickel leave as soon as that transfer portal is open. That's when you start to infer, hey, these guys who are sitting on the bench are going through a lot in practices and are not seeing anything really paying off of their work. And players want to hoop, and if they don't have the opportunity to hoop when it matters, I mean, you're gonna see changes in your program as a result of that.
I agree 100%, and I think that's why this year's so very important. I said it earlier in this show. I've said it a lot. You have dots, right? 1 season is a dot, and 2 seasons is another dot, but there's a line between those dots, and what the angle that line is going. And so I think it's going to be an interesting discussion. A lot of discussion in the chat about who's coming back or whatever. Look, Inside Carolina will keep you updated 100% when there's news. It'll be posted and sent out. So make sure you join Inside Carolina Premium, especially if you're not. But for me, it doesn't really matter who comes back. We need to see some growth from Hubert Davis and his coaching staff. And so that'll be the tell for me. Doesn't really matter who's on the roster if everything else stays the same. So something to watch there. I know you have a question. I'm going to ask one more. And I'm going to steal yours maybe.
Okay.
Would you rather, and I don't know exactly what you have, but would you rather, if you were North Carolina, would you rather be in the situation they're in now, or would you rather be Purdue or Virginia?
Well, my perspective as an alumni and fan, again, I talked about it's a little relieving, I think, with this team that has underperformed to not go out and maybe see further embarrassment by losing to a low-seeded team or being the number 1 seed in the NIT and losing like Rutgers and Clemson did. I think that raised a lot of eyebrows, and I could very much have seen Carolina following that same path. I bet, though, as a program, and if I'm a coach, probably you still take the opportunity to play in the NCAA tournament, to have that stage and for those players to get that experience. And then, having a upset loss is something to theoretically build on. But to your point too, as you said, with coaching and development, to me, it's not just, okay, what does that loss say about this team? It's how do you rebound from that loss as a program, or how do those players get better from that loss? Virginia was the first number 1 seed to ever lose to a 16 seed. And then the very next year, they went and won a national title. Again, had a lot of luck, made a lot of special shots along the way. A lot had to work in their favor to do that. But I also think it is a testament to Tony Bennett's coaching to be able to maybe use that as fuel to the fire and say, here's what we've got to do to change it. And Virginia as a program hasn't exactly done all that much in the tournament since then. And there are a lot of reasons why we can diagnose that. But to keep it with Carolina, I do still think that it probably favors, okay, make it into the tournament, because that already says at least something about how your regular season went, and have the opportunity to play. And if you get unlucky or if you don't execute, that's something to build upon, versus missing out entirely and the players lack that experience. And then I feel like it's harder to use as a coaching tool of like, let's just get back and saying this is our goal for something that these guys didn't even experience. At least making the tournament, you're dipping your toe in the water, even if you do get upset.
Yeah. I mean, look, you'd rather be in the arena, right? I'd rather be in the arena than in the stands. And Carolina, and I'm not asking the question earlier, and John Kramer in the chat said he'd rather be Carolina. I'm not asking in program-wise. I'm asking specifically right now, would you rather be outside looking in, or would you rather be in there and then get beat? And I think you always want to be in there. You're going to lose games without question. And your point about Virginia in 18 and then in 19, does Virginia win that national championship in 19 if they don't lose in 18? You never know, but you certainly know that was part of the process. Same thing with 2016-17 Carolina. You cannot get experience if you don't play. You can't get experience in practice. You can get experience in pickup games, but you cannot get experience without real live action, and that's playing in games. And so, and then that goes back to the NIT thing, but especially, I mean, Purdue's players, whether or not it's realized on the court, will have a lifetime of lessons learned.
Yes.
The other day or yesterday. Virginia the same way. Virginia's lost in the first round, if my math is correct, every year but one in the last 4, and that year was when they won the national championship. Do you trade that? I would think Carolina fans would certainly trade a national championship for 3 first-round losses.
Yes.
Something else somebody asked, and it's probably going to be the winner.
A quick note on Purdue as well. Zach Edey's a junior. Mm-hmm. He doesn't have great NBA prospects. He could come back. Purdue's guards, I believe, are both freshmen. They're a pretty young team. You know, they lost Jaden Ivey to the NBA, but like theoretically, Purdue could be ahead of schedule here. And you could, I'll be very curious to see how they do next year if they return those guys, come back and say, well, what we're going to do is avoid that embarrassment, use it for fuel to the fire, and then we'll actually see what they can do. But there's no doubt it's not a great position to be in coming off of being on the wrong side of history.
Well, the good thing for North Carolina is that Purdue losing that game takes this NIT should they have played or not discussion totally out of the national narrative.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it was gone anyway. It was really trying to go. I know I heard a couple people reference it. I'm watching some ball games yesterday, but when a 16 beats a 1, that's the only talk you're going to hear about. And so another question, this is from Gunslinger Hill in the chat. If this team wins the national championship last year, who doesn't come back this year and where do they go? It's another thing I just mentioned, trading first-round losses for a national championship. You trade the entire roster for a national championship.
Yeah.
If you look in 5 and you look in 9, everybody can go pro. Doesn't matter where they go. But, I mean, if you win a national championship, and if Carolina would have won the national championship last year, I think the discussion we're having right now is very different, but the roster would look completely different than last year.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And you don't blame people for leaving. So that's my take on that. You always trade a national championship for whatever comes after it every day of the week.
Yeah, my question, I agree with that, and I think it's almost so hypothetical, and there's so much hindsight to it that a lot of answers would be like, well, who would we lose from the roster, or who would Carolina lose from the roster that would then maybe change the outcome of this season for the better in some ways? I think that's a bit of a slippery slope. My question that I have for the two of you is much more maybe what Carolina is facing at the moment, which is you've lost 3 players to the transfer portal already. McCoy, we kind of figured he was going. He didn't see the floor a whole lot, but Dontrez Styles and Tyler Nickel were the type of players where historically the UNC men's basketball program would keep them and develop them, and they would be eventual stars for this team. In your mind, what do you think is ultimately a worse look for the Carolina program? To lose a player like Tyler Nickel, who holds his state record in high school scoring and who is a freshman, didn't see the court a whole lot? Or is it worse to lose a player like Styles, who's an in-state kid, the rare in-state kid that Carolina is getting these days, and who was in the program for 2 seasons and still didn't see the floor a whole lot?
I mean, this one, I can't blame Tyler Nickel for transferring because, I mean, you watched him all season. When he did play, he was a bucket.
I don't think you can blame either of them.
You can't blame either. Let me rephrase that. But I mean, you just look at Tyler Nickel and like he didn't get any playing time and he had all these scoring. With Dontrez, I mean, he grew up here. He was a Carolina fan growing up. The program meant a lot to him. And for, Tyler's from Virginia. What had to happen for Dontrez to not get the time that honestly I rightfully think he earned? I think that's a sign of Dontrez leaving is like, we're not taking the time to develop these players. We're not taking the time to give them the minutes on the court that maybe they deserve, especially in a moment when, Caleb struggles or RJ struggles or any player for that matter struggles that we, in games that aren't, we were talking about Portland and the tournament earlier, we could have taken those times to give him some minutes. And I think just a sign that he's not playing is that he's leaving is just, it's not a good look for the program.
I think the transfer portal's changed everything. I've talked to, and Melvin said it, Melvin Scott said it, and other players have said it in the past. If it was so easy to leave back in the day, Dean Smith and Roy Williams probably would have had their share of guys doing that. But times have changed for a couple things. One, you can't just go and play. And 2, people, because of that, took ownership of their their own actions more so than I think maybe we see these days. I think for a North Carolina kid, Dontrez Styles to leave is not a good look, just simply because he's a North Carolina guy. And, Tyler Nickel came down from Virginia, scored a ton of points. We can have the level of competition discussion all you want, but you scored 2,500 points, whatever it was. That's tough to do on air. You never want to see guys leave the program that never really had a shot. But I don't like to see North Carolina kids leave North Carolina. That being said, I think we need to watch where they wind up. And we talked about that. We talked about it off the air a little bit, and we've talked about it a lot, especially in the football side of it, is if somebody transfers, like I remember Cliff Rozier at North Carolina. I'm dating myself again, but it was back when I was in school. They had the Fab Five, right? You had Montrose, Reese, Phelps, Pat Sullivan, and Cliff Rozier. Rozier left, goes to Louisville, who was in the Metro Conference at the time, and wins Conference Player of the Year twice in a row. That dude could play. And, hard times in life and all, and it didn't work out for him ultimately in life. But where does Nickel end up? Where does Styles end up? Do they end up at a big-time school and make a big-time difference? Or were there some issues in evaluations in high school recruiting or things like that? So it's not as simple as saying it's a bad look for a player to leave, because a player has to do what they need to do, but also for me, you never want to see that in North Carolina. And people talking about the Kinston pipeline and all that. It's, Brandon Ingram kind of blew that one up. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens to those guys. You wish them well and all, but people have to do what they have to do.
Absolutely. And as you pull up our next question too, I wanted to try and put some numbers to how the transfer portal has changed everything. We, of course, know the sheer numbers of whatever it was. 1,700 kids entered the portal on the first day it was open on Monday. We know that it is bananas, but in the context of the Carolina program, Tommy, in 18 years under Roy Williams, when the program, largely when the portal did not exist, UNC had 9 transfers out of the program. And 3 of those came in Williams's final 2 seasons when the portal did exist. Walker Kessler was the final one right before Roy's retirement. So I still counted that as one of those transfers out. So it does not happen very often with this Carolina program, but even under Williams's tenure, we were seeing right there at the end, there was more player movement than before. And now in 2 seasons under Hubert Davis, we've seen Dawson Garcia, Anthony Harris, Kerwin Walton, Tyler Nickel, Justin McCoy, now Dontrez Styles. That's 6. That is a lot of movement, but it's also not too far off from what we were already seeing when Roy Williams was coaching the team too. I think if you took a look at all of the other programs out there too, they're seeing similar movement. I think as Carolina fans and alumni, there's maybe some sticker shock in terms of seeing, oh my gosh, there's a lot of people leaving. Why do they want to leave? Fair question to ask. But to your point, Tommy, guys want to play. Guys are making business decisions, and the transfer portal is making it easier than ever to do it. And Carolina is just not going to be immune to it. It's just not.
Yeah, and we need to take a break and come back on the other side. In fact, let's go ahead and take a break, come back on the other side. We're listening to Inside Carolina, or you're listening to Inside Carolina Live. That's the Johnny T-shirt IC Takeover segment. We'll figure out a winner. We'll get in contact. $50 gift card to get all the swag you need at Johnny T-shirt. But we'll come right back after the break for our last segment. Daniel, Brighton, Tommy, we'll be right back.
This is Zach Penalto, and you're listening to Inside Carolina Live.
Start your healthy day off at First Watch, the Daytime Cafe, with one of the 3 specials and a brand new beverage from the Juice Bar, Tangerine Dream, with tangerine, pineapple, organic ginger, and cane sugar. It joins Kale Tonic, Purple Haze, and Morning Meditation as the ever-popular regulars on the Juice Bar menu. Begin your breakfast or lunch with a tasty choice at First Watch, the Daytime Cafe, on the corner of East 54 in Chapel Hill.
This is Pete Seagroves, and since Mark has commandeered the mic, I wanted to wish everyone a happy 2023, and I will let him tend to your insurance needs.
Thanks, Pete. What should business owners be aware of going into the spring season? We always like to check in with our clients, as it is a popular time to purchase new equipment, complete renovations, hire new staff. These factors need to be considered in to the current insurance program to be accurate in the event of a claim.
For more information, go to seagrowsinsurance.com, insuring what matters to North Carolina.
The Orange County Department of Social Services continues to operate pandemic-related programs for water and utility assistance and enhance pandemic benefits for traditional programs like food and nutrition services. Staff is also available to assist with emergency financial support for rent and utilities, medical assistance through Medicaid, employment services, and other social work programs. Residents can visit either office location or call 919-245-2800.
I'm Scott Cummings from Dynamic Electric, where we're ready to take care of all your electrical needs for home or business. We want working with Dynamic Electric to be easy. We strive to provide hassle-free service, quality electrical repairs, and prompt responses. Our experienced electricians are licensed, bonded, and insured. The best part, we're locally owned and operated right down the road in Hillsboro, and here to help you. Give us a call to schedule a service visit or discuss your next project.
Dynamic Electric. Local, reliable, experienced. Online at dynamic-electric.com.
This is Hubert Davis, head coach of the Tar Heels. The new Sheridan, Chapel Hill, has been completely renovated with all the amenities you need to fully enjoy your time here. So don't forget to make reservations for you, your family, and friends at the new Sheridan, Chapel Hill, where so many Tar Heel alumni and fans stay for home games and other special visits. Go to SheridanChapelHill.com for our home games and your other reasons to be in Chapel Hill. Thank you, and go Heels.
The Chapel Hill Media Group is 97.9 The Hill, WCHL, your hometown radio station, and chapelboro.com, your daily online newspaper. With local news, local events, music for folks who love music, Tar Heel sports, and everything else you need to know to be in the know. Start your day on the air or online. Get informed and connected with your community through the Chapel Hill Media Group. You're listening to Inside Carolina Live with Tommy Ashley and Joey Powell on 97.9 The Hill, WCHL, the flagship station for Tar Heel sports.
If you want to live,
Oh, we all want to live. Treat me good, you will live.
if you want to live,
Inside Carolina Live. Last segment. Tar Heel Duckhead. I'm not sure what you're saying. Nice hat. Did you see me somewhere with a hat, or are you just picking on my bald head?
I was wearing a hat earlier.
Maybe that's
on. Repping my hometown of Brevard today.
Right. That's Brighton over there. I'm the shiny head selling advertisements right here. Whatever you want to put on there. Last segment, we were talking about transfer portal and all that, and we can sort of go there. But there's a team still playing we need to talk about a little bit, and that's the women's team. Had Matt Krause on earlier. And of course, everybody, if you're not a premium subscriber, get a premium subscription to Inside Carolina. Sign up for the text alerts. Any breaking news that you get a text. There will be some breaking news at some point. Some of this stuff has got to start shaking out. But let's talk about the women a little bit, Brighton. I don't think they got a very good deal, and I talked about it with Matt Krause in the NCAA tournament. But the problem with that is whether or not you feel slighted, you got to line up and tee it up and all the cliches in play. And Carolina has St. John's today. St. John's beat UConn this year, which once upon a time beating UConn was not a thing. South Carolina's kind of moved into that role, but you know, you've been in Chapel Hill, you followed the women. Courtney Banghart has got it going a little bit. They need to figure out how to win today, but what do you see from the women's team that gives you hope and expectation that Banghart's got this thing on the right path?
Well, I think it is the right combination of players to make an NCAA tournament run. And they took their lumps last year, making it to the Sweet 16, losing to South Carolina, but giving South Carolina arguably the hardest game they had on the way to a national title game. A lot of those players are back, and now Carolina has two impressive freshmen that are coming off of the bench and providing some really different dynamics to the game. But what the reason why you worry a little bit about St. John's is not just a tough environment, not just a tough opponent, but this Carolina team, they've not been shooting great over the last few games, and they've looked very good at times. They've got a great resume, but they've also sometimes hit these streaks where they just can't put the ball in the basket and they lose a couple. They started the year on a 6-game winning streak. Then they run into one of the best teams in the country in Indiana. Then they have a 4-game skid around Christmas. Then they respond with an 8-game winning streak over conference play. And then they've had some injuries since then to Eva Hodgson and Alyssa Utsby. They've been a little up and down. So to me, this is an opportunity. As Matt Krause said in the interview, this has been a long break for the Tar Heels. It's not good in terms of being able to be in a rhythm of playing, which St. John's kind of has the opportunity to, being one of those first 4 teams. And we saw in the men's tournament that can sometimes be a huge benefit, thinking of FDU and thinking of how Pitt looked yesterday. Mm-hmm. But these Tar Heels, they're good. Their coach is good. I think they have the right mentality to come out and give some people a scare today. I do think that Deja Kelly, the star player and the leader of that team, really. Talking about Carolina shooting woes, it kind of stems back to her. She's shot just 30% from the floor in UNC's last 4 games. But shout out to Michael Coe, our sports writer for 97.9 The Hill in Chapelboro. He pointed out that in last year's tournament, Deja Kelly, huge difference maker for the Tar Heels because she averaged 22 points a game, shot 45% from 3. So if Deja and the rest of the team can kick it into another gear now that they're in the tournament compared to how they shot in the last few games of the regular season and in the ACC tournament, Carolina should be able to get a win today.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, and this, I love Charles Barkley, and a lot of people don't, but Charles was talking about, and he talks about it all the time, defense travels, right? Shooting doesn't travel, offense doesn't travel, but defense travels. And Carolina, as brutal as they have looked on offense at times, especially in the 2 Duke games in the regular season, well, at the end of the regular season and then in the SEC tournament, the defense is stout.
Yes.
And they're going to need that. And it's interesting, right? You got Deja Kelly, who's sort of the leader, face of the program, mercurial player. She needs to play better and she needs to shoot it well. But you've got other ladies that are, less talked about. I don't want to say less known, because if you follow Carolina basketball, you know who Kennedy Todd Williams is. You know Hodgson and Utsby. But everybody needs to play well, but Carolina's defense has got to be on point. St. John's shoots the ball better from every level than North Carolina does. They've had that extra game. And I think this is a huge deal to be able to get that extra game. Carolina's been off almost 2 weeks. And then you're going into an environment where St. John's is still lathered up from getting a win a couple of days ago. So I think it does good to get away from home sometimes. I think it would do well at times for the men's team to get away from home. We'll see what happens. We'll see what goes on. But they play later today, and Carolina fans need to be paying attention. And you need to be watching Austin O'Connor, the wrestler, going for a second national championship.
Yes, and one last point on Carolina's defense. They have led the ACC in turnover margins this year. To me, that jumps out as a stat of a team that could do well in the NCAA tournament if they can overcome their offensive struggles, because turnovers, easiest buckets you can get most of the time if you can get some turnovers and fast break. And that is probably what this Carolina women's basketball team needs to advance past St. John's today.
Yep, absolutely. Shout out to Melvin Scott, Matt Krause, UNC women's basketball play-by-play, Dewey Burke, Daniel Myrick on the board, Brighton McConnell sitting in for Joey Powell. Joey Powell texted me and said he's leaning towards Baylor. He's not really sure if the Bears want a 6'4" center with no face-up game.
He's just a big Scott Drew guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But, he loved his official visit. We'll be back next week, Inside Carolina Live. Johnny T-Shirt and JohnnyT-Shirt.com. Check us out on the boards. Check us out here. We'll see you next week.
What's up? It's RJ Davis. Oya Cantina in Briar Chapel has been my go-to for Latin American food since arriving in Chapel Hill, which is why I'm excited to announce the new dish we created, RJ's Cajun Shrimp Burrito. RJ's Cajun Shrimp Burrito has the right amount of kick